Florido, and I am here on CRW Network, CannaCurious. I want to get right into the topic because I have so much I want to talk about here. I am here with Briley. Say hi, Briley.
Hi there.
Briley is going to help dig into a conversation. We're celebrating International Women's Day. Yay!
Yay!
Power to the flower. And so actually we want to talk about flower. We want to talk about women's flower and we want to talk about the cannabis flower. And there is a connection between the two. And Briley, you have a conversation weekly right now. You talk
Yes.
about this subject on your show. Tell us a little bit about your Sexijuana.
Yes.
So fun, the combination of the two. Let's talk about this for a minute. What are some of the ways that cannabis is helping women with their sexuality?
Honestly, cannabis relieves so many different anxieties when it comes to whether it's your solo play or you're bringing your partner into the bedroom. There is a lot more ways to have the pain relief as well as maybe a little extra added fun to it. So I would personally say, it just kind of depends on the partner. It depends on the connection that you guys have as to whether or not you'd like partake in smoking, edibles. My favorite is with the lubricants. I love to be able to put the mixture of the CBD and the THC in there. Different essential oils as well too to kind of play with that realm. So yeah, it's pretty kind of open. It's a big spectrum as to what we have available to us now, especially sexually. And nobody really kind of wants to talk about it. Everyone gets a little like
Squirmy.
tiptoes around it, which is kind of cute, but like
Yep.
it's so beautiful to have that open connection, to have that open channel with women coming together and talking about our sexuality. I believe it's liberating and it's healing, and cannabis helps bridge that gap.
I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. I can't agree more. There is definitely an interesting thing that you stumble upon when you start to use cannabis or even CBD. You know, when you start to use this plant, which, by the way, as a reminder to all, it is the female part of the plant that makes that beautiful THC that so many people really appreciate. The ability to flower, to bud. Actually, that's why they call it bud. But it's the female plant. So first, we have this connection that it is something from the female part of the plant. And now, when you start to use it, there's a couple of different things, like you said. One is the ability to inhale it, right? So by
Right.
smoking it or vaporizing it, now you're working on from head to toe. First of all, the mental part of your sexuality, like you
Right.
said, with somebody or by yourself, but the idea of exploring what makes you happy, what
Right.
really, really does it. And when you're maybe an A-type personality, creativity and just free form thinking isn't always that easy to come by. Right.
Right.
And so the ability to be able to say that there is a way to break down your stigma, break down your thought process, and just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And the flower can do it that way. But you're also talking about something where you're not necessarily smoking it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have combinations of like edibles as well too, which can be fun. I think it's awesome to highlight that edibles have a fantastic ability. If you can find a way to microdose with it, for women that do struggle with pain and having that uncomfortable moments where it's just really unbearable, I find edibles, because they have to pass through the digestive system, it tends to target more of those pain sensors in the uterus a little bit easier for us. So I find a combination, and it's all self-exploration or self-awareness. I do a lot of journaling, recommending to all my patients and clients to have just kind of how to show up for yourself and how it resonates with you and with your partner, having that open communication. So it's kind of multifaceted in how liberating cannabis can be. You know, you're working it through, you're processing it, you're experimenting, you're adventuring.
Right.
But my favorite, like you said, is the suppositories. So you can use it as lubricants, or you can medicate your suppositories. So that's one of the newer things that's on the market now. It's a little bit, like you said, not a little bit more taboo, but it's, you know, it's focalized for pain receptors. It's great because it like starts in about 2 to 10 minutes, depending on how much you use. A lot of them are coconut oil based, hemp oil based, avocado oil, depending on
Yeah.
allergies and whatnot. There are different sensitivities too to be aware of. You know, like some people are allergic to THC and or certain different kinds of oils. Like there's a lot of, you know, like the nut allergies as well too. So being very aware and doing a lot of your homework with that. But there's a segment that we did on the Bud Show where we, you know, medicated suppositories on air. It was really, really cool because we got to, you know, figure out whether we wanted to use RSO, put more CBD in it for the time being, or, you know, up the THC. And then you have your essential oils that help relieve the pain, help more of an aphrodisiac as well too. So those double as not only a relief factor but lubricant. So it makes it so much easier for the both of you to kind of synergize in
Wow.
that facet. Yeah.
It's it's supposed to be very natural, but this seems like there's a little bit of thinking that goes into it. But if you're going to
Yeah.
if you're having challenges where where it's painful, or you have something going on that causes pain or dryness, and there's a lot of people who take medications where one of the side effects is dryness, and
Yeah.
that's not fun. I want to have fun and I want to just relax, and you can't do that. And it's probably very frustrating. I mean,
Yeah.
when women are coming to you and saying, "Help me," they must be at their breaking point, right? I mean, they're really
Yeah.
in a place where they need someone to help get them to be able to enjoy it. And
Yeah.
this is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely it's so it honestly, I used it to kind of help bring back my sexuality. Like it got to the point where I wasn't even able to enjoy myself anymore. And so having that as an option was wonderful. It's direct to the point, it's creative, it's fun, it's, you know, it's interactive. And honestly, a lot of the lubricants too, we can use solo play. So it's fun to kind of experiment and adventure with it. But
Yeah. I mean, it's a new thought process for a lot of people thinking about your CBD product, or your or something with the THC product from the dispensaries, where you can utilize that. Of course, it's an edible. Everybody knows you can have it as a brownie, right? So why
right,
not consider the thought of an edible in a different way, in a different
right,
place, and
right.
very direct impact. That's a really interesting note. But they're not just using it for that. Although women's health issues, exploring, finding their sexuality is one piece of it. You also
Mhm.
talk to a lot of people who are dealing with some traumatic issues. Um,
Yes.
is that Tell us a little bit more about that?
So I work with a lot of women who have gone through different sexually traumatic experiences, whether it be from the past, current, different diseases of the uterus as well too. So trauma can be stored in the body in so many different ways. Emotionally, especially as women, we store and harbor it all in our sacral chakra, which is going to be our flower, our yoni, our uterus. And it tends to really, really affect all of that. And then it's just a rippling effect from there. But you know, I feel like society kind of expects us to show up for ourselves, know what that looks like, but not really give anybody the room to figure that out. And especially with different holistic ways of healing, I feel that there needs to be a safe, open space. So I work with women who necessarily have more taboo situations, like I said, more diseases of the body or emotional trauma, sexual trauma, anything from the past that we need to work through, kind of showing a little bit more of that self love, working with cannabis, figuring out, you know, what is you, how can we heal from this point on, how can you show up for yourself, what's expected of you in life, and what you can expect from a partner, how to communicate that. So there's a lot of different facets that go into my sessions with my patients, but it's wonderful. I knew I wasn't the only one that had one of these situations. You know, it took me about 9 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis, PCOS, vaginismus, dysmenorrhea, all of that fun jazz. Went through a miscarriage, and it's just crazy because nobody really talks about not just the physical, but the sexual and the emotional and the mental and every other different side effects from that. And that in turn is trauma. So we've got to kind of work through that, and having that safe space with another woman to move through that in a holistic manner. It's very liberating and it's very healing.
I can imagine that if you are already if naturally we harbor all of our stress and all of our traumatic um, that energy, um, and now this is supposed to be the place where we're supposed to find our sexuality. It's not happening.
Mhm.
It's just not going to
Right.
happen. And now
Yeah.
on top of it, you're just adding to the body, and we already know many times we've heard people are using cannabis. They're using CBD rich hemp to help
Hmm.
through PTSD, for instance. And
Yes.
oftentimes we're hearing about it with veterans, with people who have been um, to war, but
Hmm.
we also know that people with other types of domestic abuse or other traumatic issues, like they've been in a horrible car accident,
Hmm.
or in cases where you've had some sort of a diagnosis to your body, and now
Yeah.
you have to move through that. Like you said, it's a similar situation, and the same way that it has helped those people to move through the stress, to move through the trauma, and to do so without the use of opioids or other medications
Right.
um,
Yeah.
that could make it a little bit even harder to pass through the situation, but also cause a myriad of side effects. So now this is a more natural approach, very holistic approach. Um,
Hmm.
how I, how does one work with you through this? Is it like a psychology class? Is it more of
It's
a
like
step?
it's like a life coaching, and I have different certifications in coaching, holistic nutrition, yogic therapy. I specialize a lot with the yin restorative. I also am a certified doula instructor as well too, and help deliver all the
There's
babies.
some trauma
So
for a lot of people. That's a
absolutely,
big
like
piece.
it's a whole community, honestly. And it sounds weird to say community because it's just like, oh, why would you say community with like those negative connotations? But at the same time, we have to be a community in order to support each other and to
Sure.
let each other know and communicate, hey, you're not the only one. We can talk this through, we can move it through. This is what this looks like to move forward in a healing manner, instead of being judgy and off. So often we're just, it's very self-serving of us, and we already have all of that going on personally. We don't need to have to worry about processing it, with the judgment and shame around that. Society sells sex, but yet we are so quickly to shame it and to judge. And so that, for me, I'm just like, that's just kind of an oxymoron to me. I don't understand how that's processed, but it is, yeah, like it's.
So, so why aren't all women using this then? I mean, it sounds to me like if you've given birth, if you've had traumatic um, some sort of a trauma, some sort of diagnosis, you sounds like a very large community. Why aren't
Yeah.
we all using this?
Honestly, it's just word of mouth education. This industry, specifically with the cannabis, I've found since I've been in it, it is growing so fast. Regulations, compliances are always changing, and it's hard to keep up. But there's not a lot of education platforms when it comes to this. So it's wonderful to be a part of this show, absolutely, as well as Bud Show too. It's like it's cool to have these group of people in this community speaking up and talking education. I mean, there's got to be a higher standard of wellness that we're offering to people. And it's about empowering the patient, giving that power back to the patient. It's knowledge, it's education, and being able to, it's overwhelming, it's inundating, and like I said, it's just word of mouth. Like, we have to be more open with this stuff. And what's interesting too is I love that CBDs become so more readily available, especially, THC is not legalized everywhere. So I know that it's frustrating for some patients, some women, to not be able to get their hands, especially on the THC side of things.
Right.
But if we work together as a community and have more of a, have more of like the educations on CBDs as well as the essential oils, the terpene factors. There's a lot more healing. Like CBD is life's lubricant, is what I like to call it. Like it is just like it's just wonderful. It's just yeah, it's wonderful,
So
and
it's
it's
not all
so
THC. You don't have to just use the THC
exactly,
for the healing to be there, the
right,
benefits to be there, the
right,
opportunity to have it as a lubricant, the opportunity
yeah,
to explore, to find your sexuality, but to also address what's happening in like you said, even considering it in a suppository fashion.
yeah,
There's more approaches. Um,
yeah.
what are some of the popular new products? What are some of the things that you're hearing about? Because there's a lot of stuff coming out to market now, and whether it's
Oh yeah.
CBD products, THC products,
Mhm.
different applications. What are
Yeah.
you seeing out there that's specific to women, to their sexuality, to cannabis?
I'm finding a lot of, like I said, like different sprays and stuff. My favorite is Stonioni that I've been using. I use that as like you can use it as a straight spray on a lubricant. I use some of it in some of my suppositories, depending on how I like to be, how how much fun we'd like to have in that department.
Yep.
But I've seen so many more lubricants and suppositories lately to coming out, and it's just interesting to me because that is such a specific niche, I feel like, and it's tailored specifically not just to women, kind of as a whole. Like that's the market for it. But honestly, I feel like you could use it in both situations. So as a doula, like I recommend some of the suppositories for pregnant mommies. I know it's not wonderfully glorious to talk about, but men and women, we all have to take care of the downstairs nether regions, and using suppositories with that, like I said, could be healing, it could be moisturizing, could be, it just eases a lot of discomforts within the body. And aside from that, like, yeah, it's just those are up and coming right now. I've heard a few different products of like different THC lubricated condoms, which were
Mhm.
interesting. I
That's
know
exciting.
there's like some different eco companies, like Foria Wellness is one of the other ones, as well too. Pure Earth, like they've just been coming up with different varieties. I
Mhm.
like to play with them and mess with them and like deconstruct and have at it. But
Right.
I'm very happy that a lot more of these products are becoming up and talked about.
I think it's interesting because when we talk about these women's products, and if you're watching this and you don't know of a product that has been interesting, comment on it. Let's
Yeah.
see here. Let's hear about some of these conversations, these new products that are coming out, because we're seeing things like tampons, infused
Yeah.
tampons. I think wasn't that was that Whoopi Goldberg that came out with a line that had infused
Yeah,
tampons?
like medicated tampons. Yeah, and you can do that with some of the other products too, lubricants, just dip it in there and pop it up in, freeze it. Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's and you mentioned depending on how much putting, how much of it you put into your suppository or use in your
Hmm.
lubricants could change that approach. So, is the tingly more tingly? Is that what you're experiencing?
Yeah, well, depending on what I use more of, so the CBD definitely helps alleviate the pain. The THC brings the tingling in. So I try to use, if I'm in a lot of pain and it's just one of those situations where I just need relief, I'm using a lot of the THC. Like it is a nice healthy mix of the two of them. If I'm just in the moment having some playtime, it's going to be a little bit more of just the CBD side of things. I feel like that is kind of, the basis of all that you need. You don't really need too much more than that. So, yeah, I think the THC is more of the pain relief side of things. CBD is more of the playtime fun lubricant.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. And
Yeah.
I think that with these new products that are coming out, one of the nice things is that many of them are being created by women. So I
Hmm.
believe that I hope. I mean, tell me I'm right, please. That there's more of a attention to what is going into these products, knowing that they're going
Absolutely.
to be hitting the most delicate parts of our body, that
Absolutely.
they're not putting things in there that aren't good. I mean, is that safe,
Right.
or are there products that are being made that we still have to keep our eye out?
I would definitely still do a lot of our homework just because unfortunately there's just some people like to cut corners, and I just highly, highly recommend doing as much research as possible. That's why I always say if you have access to medicinal marijuana, regardless if you're just getting CBD side of things, I still urge you to have it. It's that extra lifeline of support and security that you have, and you know that you're going to be getting it at a dispensary, which is going to be, they already paid for the third party testing. I mean, we can always individually go into our pockets. It's ridiculous how much it costs for that, and we really should have that more openness. But there are a lot of other companies that are dedicated to double checking these places as well as the products too. So that's super important. So the ones that I personally use here in the state of Arizona, they're all from the dispensary. We work with them closely in cahoots with the brand that I also represent too. So it's nice to have that one-on-one basis to have that. So really having that connection of people in the industry currently and the people that aren't is going to be the lifeline gap that we have to have it more openly talked about in communities that are not necessarily cannabis oriented and kind of normalize it, you know.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's good to hear that there is a focus on making sure that things are getting lab tested and clean, and that the products that they're putting in there, that they're not cutting corners, or at least we're gonna be able to see that in the ingredients. Um, and I want to go back because you were talking about the dispensaries and some of the products, and it reminded me, for instance, that it's not just about um, the tinctures or oils, but even like oh, what's their name? Hi Buddy? Is it
Hi, Bunny.
Hi Buddy Honey, for instance?
Oh, okay. Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
so
honey.
when you talk about edibles and you talk about things that are kind of, if you're going to experiment, there's options. There's some interesting
Yeah.
things that you can consider. I know CR World has a coconut oil. It has a honey there that the coconut oil is, of course, an ingestible, but can be made into a suppository as well. So being able to freeze it and have a multitasker,
Yeah.
there's some really interesting products that are giving people lots of ways to experiment and play. And of course, you can still use those products for your everyday use, even when it's
Yeah.
not for anything in the bedroom. Um,
Yeah.
so, w- what m- else do you want to tell these women for International Women's Day about cannabis and their sexuality?
Embrace it. It's uncomfortable, and honestly, it's such a beautiful uncomfortability that it's coming into your own. It's liberating yourself. It's owning your sexuality. It's healing and moving through. It's such a bonding aspect, especially for women, and not only just, just for women, but also for our partners and everything else. That communication is vital. Communication is very, very important, and taking care of yourself. You can't give what you don't give to yourself. You can't drink from an empty cup. You can't serve someone else if you're running on empty, and it's just a disservice to the both of you. And so having more of that openness and knowing it's not selfish to say yes to yourself, it's not selfish to indulge in understanding you, whether that be some solo time or whether that be, trying to something different with your partner, or, it's openness, and it should be celebrated and beautiful. Women are incredible creatures. Like, our body's designed to do so many different amazing things, and so harshly we have such a negative internal dialogue with ourselves that, like, it just we just need to
Right.
give ourselves just a little bit more patience, a little bit more love.
You
Our
just
bodies go
give
through
yourself
so much. Emotions are there for a reason. We feel them and we move through.
right, and yet you have this. You just sometimes beat yourself up, or you have this idea that it has to be a certain way. Why? Because you saw it on a movie once. It doesn't
Right,
have to be that
exactly.
way. It has to be what works for you, what makes you
Mhm.
happy. And if that means that you have to get creative, if you have to maybe explore, if you have to um, get out of your element a little bit more, then this is the way to do it. But if you have some some healing to do personally, whether it's
Right,
physically or emotionally, there's another piece to it. Well, women, if you
exactly.
have not tried this, consider it. Whether you're in a state where you can access safe and clean THC products, or if you are in a state where maybe CBD, something that's
Yeah.
federally now legal, you would be able to explore and see what might work for you. So don't be
Yeah.
afraid. If you have questions, if you want to know more, if you have a topic that you want to hear about, first of all, they can come and listen to your show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are actually launching. We've had so many different episodes that we are been culminating thus far. So we're actually going to be launching it hopefully by the end of this month, but definitely spring. So we're very, very excited for it. But yeah, we just talk. We have hold educational pieces. We talk about different organic conversations, different taboo subjects as well too. I've had several patients kind of give me the go ahead. Obviously changing certain details around, but to be a little bit more open about their processing and their experiences. And it's just so beautiful to kind of have that open community. So yeah, I would love to get people connected with that and openness. And I mean, we're on Instagram as well as sexjuanawellness.guru, so you can go on there and we'll have all of the launch stuff up. We'll have all of the education parts of it. So
And the show is going to be where? Sexy Juana? Are you
Sexijuana.
Sexawana? Um, and where will they be able to find it?
You'll be able to find that on sexjuanawellness.guru. That is going to be our main spot. Normally we have like a lot of blog posts and stuff up on there. So once we do launch, we'll be regularly updating. We'll also have it linked to our YouTube as well as our Instagram. We're on there on a daily basis. So we'll be able to pop up different episodes as well. So we'll have the links on all of our social media outlets.
Perfect. So go ahead and message Briley. If you have something specific that you want answered, message her, put it out there. Let's start that conversation. You are not the only one who has that question. I promise. Someone else is
Awesome.
going to want to talk about it too. So get that conversation started. Riley, thanks so much for joining us. It's been
Thank
really
you.
interesting to get to hear about this. I'm excited about that combination, the idea of being able to use the plant flower for the flower.
Yeah.
Definitely give it a try, see what it does for you. Riley,
Mhm.
have a great day, and thanks again for joining us on
Thank
CRW
you.
Network's Canna Curious.